Okay, so a reminder that when we were talking about proteins, we know proteins are made of amino acids, and then of the 20 proteins that we use to build our 20 amino acids that we use to build our proteins, we have a handful that are considered essential that we cannot make those proteins ourselves. And then if we call something a complete protein, that means that it has all of those essential amino acids. But if you just need a variety of proteins, you're probably going to get. All right, talked about those. Okay, so peptide hormones. So we said hormones come in two flavors. One is a steroid. That's our estrogen, progesterone, and cortisol are the main ones that we're familiar with. And then our peptide hormones, we've actually talked about these before when we were talking about sugar. So these are produced in the body, just like all hormones. They regulate things, usually in the cells or the organs. And so they're going to act on a cell receptor. And then what makes them different from a neurotransmitter is that the neurotransmitter is working in our brains or between our nerve cells. These are working elsewhere, somewhere in our cells, body fluid, blood, tissue, things like that. So plants and animals can have hormones. Sometimes hormones from one species can work on another one. All right, so we're briefly going to look at several hormones. 3 of them we have already looked at. So you should be familiar with them if you don't remember exactly what it is. Can I switch slides now? Okay, so our food-related hormones, everybody's heard of insulin. So this is the one that's made in the pancreas. It goes from the pancreas to the cells. Okay, so I kind of set this up like your guided notes telling you where it is made, what it does, and then where it's acting. So it's going to act on the cells and it's going to regulate sugar. So it helps the cells to absorb the sugar. It's going to decrease our blood sugar. And this is the one that's associated with diabetes. Remember, there are 2 kinds of diabetes. One kind of diabetes, type 1, is where the body just doesn't produce insulin. This used to be called juvenile diabetes. And that's because it's usually onsets somewhere between 8 and 17 is where it's usually noticed. And then the second kind is where your body's making insulin, but you've got so much blood sugar all the time, maybe because you're stressed and so that cortisol is telling you to have blood sugar, or maybe you just eat a lot of sugar like me. Then your body starts saying, we've always got sugar, we don't need to keep importing this. And so it's insulin resistance. It stops paying attention to insulin. Ghrelin is the one that makes your stomach grumble. That's how the ghrelin just kind of sounds like grumble to me. So I always remember that one. So it's made in the stomach and it goes to the brain. And so basically it signals to your brain, hey, I'm hungry. So in addition to making your stomach growl, it also sends that signal to your brain that you're hungry. It also, which is why you get that grumbling in your stomach, tells your stomach to start producing gastric juices, the hydrochloric acid that's in your stomach, so that it can start digesting food. So these kind of have a feedback mechanism. Your blood sugar is too high, you produce insulin. Your blood sugar is too low, your stomach produces ghrelin. So they help to maintain a good blood sugar level. As we've seen, there are other things that affect blood sugar as well, because the cortisol can help to signal blood sugar. We'll see another one here does. Then there's leptin. Now, leptin is in the fat cells, And so it actually kind of works with a feedback with the insulin as well, because those are some of the cells that are incorporating the sugar. So once those fat cells kind of get full of the sugar from the insulin allowing them in, then the leptin cells release, or the leptin released tells your brain, oh, we're full, stop eating, please. That takes a while for that process. You might have heard sometimes that if you eat too quickly, your brain doesn't get that signal that you're full and you can overeat. It takes some time for you to go from, I ate that first slice of pizza, to the body is getting the insulin out to absorb the carbs from the pizza crust. The leptin cells say, oh, I'm full, and those hormones go out. That can take 20 minutes or so. And so if you eat really quickly, it's really easy to overeat. All right, and then the last one that we haven't talked about yet is glucagon. And this is the one that also releases sugar. So insulin just helps your body to absorb the sugar. Ghrelin tells you to eat. It doesn't actually produce any sugar. Glucagon, so think glucose, glucagon, it's released in the pancreas and it goes to the liver. The liver is where you store your starch. Our version of starch, animal starch, is called glycogen. And so basically it says, okay, let's start breaking off pieces of that glycogen and turn it into glucose. That can also be stimulated by exercise, which makes sense, because if you start to exercise, your body thinks, I'm going to need some more energy. Let me go back into my stores of energy, my glycogen, my starch. Let me release some of that so I can do this jogging or this weightlifting or whatever. Yes.
I know that there's, I don't know the name of it, but I know that there's like a disorder or something where like people just all the time, like their bodies don't tell them when they're full. And so would that directly have something to do with like their levels of leptin that they have?
That sounds reasonable. I have not heard of this disorder, but that makes sense that if your body either isn't producing the leptin or your brain receptors are ignoring the leptin, then that would make you not realize you were full.
It might also be I don't know if it's a singular disorder itself or if it's like a comorbidity of something else.
Right.
Because the person that I like had experience with when I first learned about it had an array of different things.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know if it was like a comorbidity to something else or if it was a disorder.
And certainly that sounds like that could be tied to something like diabetes, where if you have excessive sugar, your body is ignoring the insulin. Maybe if you are just eating regardless of what your body tells you, the body's like, why bother telling you you're full? You're just going to eat anyway. So that it could be related to that. But like I said, I don't know in particular. Okay, so that was the bit about proteins that we hadn't gotten to. So on your test on Tuesday, then I will ask you, I'll probably do like a matching thing like I've done in the past, the names of the hormones and what they do. If you are filling out your last set of guided notes, then I will probably follow along with that in writing the test. So remember, both the chapter 5 guided notes and the last set of guided notes will have the things that are going to be the primary stuff that are on the exam. Okay, any questions about this? Yes.
Wait, you said insulin is similar to the leptin or the last one?
So both insulin and glucagon deal with the glucose in your blood.
Okay.
Insulin responds to you have the glucose and tells your cells to incorporate it. Glucagon tells your liver to make it.
Okay.
So insulin can't make the glucose, but it does deal with glucose.
Okay.
And then similarly, the ghrelin can't make the glucose,
but it tells your brain you need to eat, so you'll get some. Okay, so this deals with chapter 10. And there is a lot of stuff in chapter 10. I'm just going to focus on mostly the vitamins, a little bit the minerals. So my plan is for your test, I'm probably going to give you about 20 minutes where you're going to be able to work with other people to answer some questions about vitamins and minerals. And part of that is going to be giving you a label of a food that includes some vitamins and minerals and just saying, okay, so I see tocopherol here, which vitamin is that? I see niacin here, which vitamin is that? So as you are taking notes here, make sure that you're putting like the name with the letter of the vitamin and matching those things up. The point of that exercise being that a lot of times people get worried about, oh gosh, there's all of this stuff in my food and I don't recognize the names. Most of it is in there as things like vitamins. Not all of it, but most of it is. Okay, so micronutrients are the things that support a healthy body in contrast to the macronutrients. Macronutrients are going to add to our calories. So those are going to be things like our fats and our proteins and our sugars. The micronutrients don't really add any calories, and we only need small amounts of them. So that's the vitamins, the minerals, and to a certain extent, nucleotides. I'm not going to get into nucleotides. That's a biochemistry thing. So it'd be good to know the difference between a macronutrient and a micronutrient. So in the thousands of years that we have been eating food, mostly understanding a healthy or balanced diet has come down to what makes us feel the healthiest. And we haven't really understood a whole lot about why those things are good or not so good for us. And so you see diets that develop in different areas are reliant upon what's available in that area, but also what is necessary for survival. So if you look at the diets of early settlers in the Americas 200 years ago, a lot higher in fat than we would think would be helpful now. But these were people who had to put in a lot of physical labor in order to survive. So that was going to be important. Some of it is going to have to be related to how you can preserve food. You know, what's going to last through the winter, what doesn't last through the winter, what survives hot summers, what's fresh and in season, those kinds of things. But about 150 years ago, right around the start of the Industrial Revolution, we had a couple of things going on. And among those things was being able to process foods. And so instead of every home having to make their own bread and producing that, people were able to go to the store and buy bread. And in order to make it cheaply and in order to make it so that people enjoyed it, they would start processing the grains and the flours in different ways. And so one of the ways that they processed it was to produce what we call white flour, where they removed the grain, the gritty part of the flour, they moved the wheat germ, and the wheat germ has some oils in it, which over time can kind of smell rancid. So if they take that out, then they can make the shelf life a lot longer. People love it, but that ends up eliminating some of the nutrients. We also end up having people traveling a lot more leading up to this time period. So people crossing the ocean might be on a boat for months at a time. You don't have a greenhouse on your boat usually, so you have to pack foods that are going to be able to travel well and not spoil. That means a lot less fresh food. If you have people that are deciding that the East Coast isn't for us, we're going to start exploring the Midwest or going further west, they've got long travel. So all of those things in the last several hundred years, but particularly mid 1800s on, started changing the way people's diets were related to how healthful they would be. And so as a process, as a result of this, we started seeing more diseases that were not germ-based. And this is also right around the time when they were discovering what a germ was to begin with. But they were starting to see diseases that were more related to the foods that we ate. All right, so in this chapter, we're going to focus on vitamins. You want to be aware of what kind of nutrient we're talking about. So is it a vitamin? Is it a mineral? We're going to focus on the vitamins, where the source of that might be. And you'll see a lot of pictures here. There's a lot of things that have a variety of things. Most of the things you're going to see are either found in leafy green vegetables, whole grains, or animal-based proteins. Those are good sources of vitamins. And then we also want to look at what do they do, and that's going to be connected to, so what happens if you don't have it. So remember, all of this, if you get this in your notes, will be in your notes so that when you take your test, you can just look at your notes and see the connections. Okay, do we still need this slide? Okay. All right, so what is a vitamin? A vitamin is primarily organic, which means it has a lot of carbon in it. There are a couple that have a metal associated with them, but mostly they're going to be carbon. There are water-soluble and fat-soluble ones. The water-soluble ones will have oxygen and nitrogen associated with them, multiples. Whereas the fat-soluble ones, kind of like our lipids, are mostly going to be carbon and hydrogen. They might have like 1 or 2 oxygens, but not much. As I said before, they're necessary only in small amounts, so we don't need to eat a big old block of vitamin C. We just need some vitamin C. And then the key thing is that our bodies don't produce it. So this is kind of like our essential amino acids, that our bodies don't produce them. We have to get them from food. Now, this is organism specific. There are things that are considered vitamins for us. We cannot make vitamin C, but it might not be a vitamin for other animals or for plants. So most animals can produce their own vitamin C. Humans and guinea pigs are among the animals that cannot. So not a good idea to give your multivitamin or your Flintstones vitamin chewable to your own pet, because they may not need the same vitamins that you do, and what is helpful for you might be toxic for them. All right, are we good on this page? Okay, so we're going to look at the fat-soluble vitamins first. I'm going to come back to this page several times where I'm going to talk about each vitamin in turn. Now, the main thing to remember about the difference between fat-soluble vitamins and water-soluble vitamins is that we can store fat vitamins fat soluble vitamins in our body. The water soluble ones just kind of repeat them out all day. But the fat soluble ones get stored in our bodies. And so if you eat a lot of foods that have vitamin A, D, or K, or E, then you could potentially overdose. So vitamin K in particular is one that they don't even include it in most multivitamins because of the potential for overdose. I have heard anecdotally, not a doctor, vitamin A, that if you get too much of this is found in a lot of orange foods, that your skin can kind of take on an orange color to it. All right, so main picture about fat soluble vitamins is we don't want to have too many of them. And like I said, I'm going to be coming back to this page. So if you didn't get all of the vitamins down, don't worry, I'm coming back. Okay, so let's look at vitamin A first. It is called retinol. And you may think, I have a retina in my eye. It is related to your eyes. So it is good for your eye health and in particular for nighttime vision. So you have your cones and your rods. Your cones help you see in color. Your rods help you to see the difference between things that are dark and light. And at night, our cones don't function as well in low light. So in low light, you don't perceive colors very well. So when we talk about night vision, we're talking about that vision of, can I tell the difference between, is there an object there or not? Retinol helps with that. Most of the foods that have vitamin A are going to be your orange foods, cantaloupe, sweet potatoes, carrots, all have a lot of them. But sometimes that color can be masked. So dark green vegetables like spinach also have a lot of vitamin A. It's just that the orange color is covered up by all of the green. Oddly enough, oranges themselves, not so much with the vitamin A. They're more of a water based. So the orange comes from sunrise.
So depending on whether a vitamin is fat or water soluble, does that like determine whether or not like you can, or it would be effective in like skincare? Like
That sounds reasonable. A lot of the skincare ones are the fat soluble ones, like vitamin E, I know is used in skincare, and your skin does have a lot of fat. So
I should know if it made it like easier to or more effective to like absorb through like your skin.
that sounds reasonable. I just don't know.
Because there are some things like collagen, and they make it skincare, but collagen is really only effective when you ingest it.
Mhm.
So
Okay. So what is important with all vitamins, but I'm using vitamin A as an example here, is bioavailability. So bioavailability means, can your body take that vitamin from the food and actually use it? And so there are, is the nutrient readily absorbed by the body? Or does it just kind of pass through your digestive system incognito and your body never knew it was there in the first place? So this is going to depend on what the food is. It's going to depend on how it was prepared. So did you boil it when they froze it? Did they boil it first and then freeze it, or did they flash freeze it so it froze with all the nutrients in there? How was it being preserved? Is it preserved in a can? So canned good versus a frozen good. So all of those things are going to affect the bioavailability. So there are some foods that for a long time we thought, oh, this has a lot of, let's say, iron in it. And then it turns out that while it has a lot of iron, our body can't absorb the iron from that food. So spinach is a good example of that. So while spinach does have iron in it, it's not a great source of iron for us. So vitamin A is more bioavailable when it is in oils because it is a fat soluble vitamin. And so if you think of the different kinds of foods that you can have it, like cantaloupe may have the vitamin A, but if I'm just eating fresh cantaloupe, maybe I'm not getting as much of that vitamin A as I would have if I had, carrots with butter and whatnot, where it can absorb that vitamin. So what this is showing here is golden rice. This is just regular brown rice, and this is golden rice that they have engineered to have more vitamin A in it, because there are certain parts of the world that the difference in the diet between the wealthy and the poor is so great that the poor people may have a diet that is substantially just rice. And so they're not getting that variety to be able to get all of the nutrients. And since rice is not something that typically has a lot of vitamin A, the engineering has put the vitamin A in there. So they call it golden rice because it has a little more of a golden color to it, to provide that vitamin A. And it has significantly decreased blindness, particularly childhood blindness, in the areas where they have been using that. Okay, so that was vitamin A. Now we're back to this page again with a little more information. D is what is called calciferol. So it says calc or calc at the beginning. You should think of calcium, and calcium is good for our bones. And that's exactly what vitamin D does. It helps our body to use the calcium, to take calcium from our bloodstream and use it to build our bones. So this is commonly found in fatty fish and in eggs. So if you're living in the 1800s and you're not living in an area that has a lot of fish, and you're not one of the wealthy people that can have eggs regularly in your diet, you may start lacking vitamin D. Now, this is more of a problem in northern areas than in southern areas. And this is because your body can actually make a little bit of vitamin D. So it uses sunlight to make vitamin D. So sometimes you'll hear about people having a vitamin D deficiency because, oh, they spend all their time indoors. Only in real extreme cases would that create a deficiency. But yes, if you don't have it from your diet and you're also not spending time in sunlight, then you're not making enough of that. So the consequence of not having this thing that's helping your body use calcium, what part of your body is that going to affect? What do you think? It's going to be your bones. All right, so what happens if we don't have enough vitamin D? We end up with rickets. And so if you look at these children, particularly the ones on the outside, you can see that their legs have bowed because the bones are not strong enough to support their weight. And so the bones form wrong. And so that's what rickets is.
So that's like the mother has a vitamin D deficiency?
No, this is because the children, as they're growing, don't have the vitamin D. And it's more common in children because their bones are lengthening, especially at the ends of the bones is where the bone growth happens. And so as those bones are forming, they're not getting the calcium in them. And as the kid is walking around, whatever, their legs can't support the weight of their torso. And so the bones start to bow out or bow in order to try and support that weight. So one of the common things that was done in the 1800s to help people be more nutritious is they would give people castor oil or fish oil, that those were supposed to be supplements that would help you. And without knowing exactly why that was helping you, probably part of it was that having the vitamin D in the fish oil would be helping you out. So if you think of a place like Scandinavia, this is Northern Europe, all surrounded by the sea, their diet is heavily fish-based, but they're also in that area where they're not producing a lot of the vitamin C naturally because there's so little in the winter, so little sunlight that's available to you. So probably in that area, less of a problem. But if you get somebody who just absolutely refuses to eat fish, or they're allergic to fish, or if you start moving to the interior of a country that's central Canada, or maybe Northern Europe, but not on the coast, there you still have the problem with the light, but maybe less access to the fish. So that's where we can start seeing some of those problems. Okay, so that was vitamin D. Vitamin E is tocopherol. Now, this is an antioxidant. We're going to look at that in a few minutes, some antioxidants. And so what this means is that it is going to work against the free radicals. You may have heard of free radicals as something that's damaging. A lot of times makeup commercials will have this, fight free radicals. But free radicals are really bad, not just for your skin, for your lungs, and all of your cells, but you're mostly exposed within your respiratory system. As you breathe those in, it can cause the DNA to bind up in weird ways and not function properly, leads to cancer, leads to early aging, those kinds of things. So an antioxidant is kind of like a mop for those free radicals. It just kind of sucks up those free radicals so they can't damage. And so we can find this in corn, nuts, and seeds. So nuts and seeds are things that both have oil. Corn is one of those grains that we tend to eat the whole grain. So it still has the germ in it, which is the oily part. And then phylloquinone leads to blood clotting. So this is a good thing if you get a paper cut or cut your skin or whatever, that you don't just bleed out and die. And this one's found in dark leafy green vegetables. I didn't put it for E. E is found in the, I did, I just erased it, that's right. It was in the nuts and the seeds and things. Okay, so those are fat soluble vitamins. A lot of health benefits for them. We just don't want to have too much of them. All right, anybody still need this slide? Okay. Water soluble vitamins. So these are not stored in our body very well. So they're generally flushed out from the body in one day. That if you have your orange juice with your vitamin C and that's your only source of vitamin C, then by the end of the day, that vitamin C is gone. So you have to consume it regularly. You are very unlikely to overdose on this. This doesn't mean that it is impossible given our availability of, super powerful vitamin pill things that you can do, but you're just unlikely to overdose. So these are easy because it's just B and C. There are a whole bunch of B vitamins and there's one C vitamin, but it's just those two letters. So if it's not a B or a C, it's fat soluble. Now we're not going to go through all of the B vitamins, but I'm going to focus on the ones that are most likely to see a deficiency and come up in ingredients a lot. All right, are we good on this slide? How about now? We good? All right, so these are the B vitamins. So make sure you have the names down for each of these. There are others that are important, but these are ones that are probably the ones you're most likely to hear about either from an ingredient list or from somebody saying, oh, you got to make sure you have enough of this. So I remember the first three as TERN, TRN. So thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin. And then 9 is usually not referred to as B9. It's usually just referred to as folic acid, but it is a B vitamin. And then 12 is cobalamin. So it actually has cobalt in it. I said some of the vitamins actually have a metal, so this one has cobalt in it. So you might be wondering, well, what happened to B7 or what happened to B11? There are some of these that I'm just not listing, but as vitamins were discovered, there were a lot that they said, oh, let's call this one B11. And then they found out, oh, wait, that's not really a vitamin. Our bodies can make it. Or, oh, we don't actually need that one. So they've taken some of them off of the list. So that's why we don't have numbers 1 through 12. And there's some that go beyond 12 as well. All right, anybody need more time with this? Okay, so the first 3, thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin, these are found in whole grains. And so remember, your whole grain includes the inside part, the starch, but it also includes the shell. So if you think of a corn kernel, the yellow part of the corn is the hull, the outside part, and then the germ, which isn't a disease germ. They call it for germ for germinate. That's where it contains the DNA that helps start the plant. So in those places, it tends to be in the hull, the hard outside part, and that little germ. And so that's why it's supposed to be mostly in the whole grains. So people still eat white bread. People like white bread, particularly little kids, and those are the ones you want eating their vitamins. So at some point, the government decided if we are going to have these refined grains, we want to make sure people are still getting their vitamins. So we have to enrich them. So enriching means we're going to restore the natural levels. So if you see in pasta or bread, anything that is grain-based, listings of thiamine, riboflavin, or niacin, sometimes it's listed as niacinamide, so it'll be like similar names. That's their way of restoring the things that were taken out when they took out the whole grain and when they took out the hull and the germ. Okay, so this is enriched is different from fortified, and we'll get to fortified in a minute. Enriched means we are restoring what was there before. It was supposed to be there, we took it out through processing, and we're just restoring it to make sure we have our good vitamins. Okay, are we good on this one? Okay, we good now? Okay, so let's look at the first one, thiamine. The deficiency in thiamine is called beriberi. It actually has another name. I think it's Kwashiorkor syndrome, named after a scientist. And it causes encephalopathy, which is your brain swelling. So if your skull restricts the size of your brain and your brain gets swollen, then that's like a bad thing. It's trying to swell up in an enclosed place, and that's going to cause problems. So brain problems can lead to amnesia. So this is a problem when you have a diet that is primarily grain-based, and you don't have the whole kernel. Okay, so you have the refined grains. So this was actually noticed in different parts of the world during the Industrial Revolution. One of the videos that I posted for this chapter, you don't have to watch the videos, but if you're interested, talks about a Japanese scientist who had kind of discovered this based on who was getting the disease and who wasn't. And so one of the places people were getting it was on boats. They didn't have protein from a lot of different places because they couldn't keep it fresh. But the sailors were allowed to have as much white rice as they wanted. Well, the white rice doesn't have the whole grain on it. But they also found that poor people living in cities were also getting this. So the poor people had the white rice, but they didn't have the other kinds of proteins, whereas the rich people were able to buy the eggs and the fish and so on and so forth. But in the country, people couldn't get the polished rice. That was kind of a fancy city thing. So they were fine because they had the whole rice, the brown rice. Okay, so having a varied diet, the theme of vitamins and minerals, eat a lot of different things, allows for more sources of vitamin. If you don't just restrict yourself to white bread, if you also have protein coming from other places, then you can avoid this. All right, I know this slide has a lot, so I'm going to wait a minute before I move on. I was reading about this and it's interesting. They have wet berry and dry berry and adult berry and infant berry. So they have like lots of varieties of these. And they all kind of overlap with one another. So it's weird that they divide them up, but apparently it appears in infants a little different than it appears in adults. All right, are we good now? Okay. Niacin is also one that is found in whole grains. And this one was discovered to be related to people with corn-based diets. So it's not bioavailable in corn. So we do tend to eat the whole grain of corn, but in order to get the nutrients out of the corn, it has to be treated with an alkali. Remember, alkali was another term for a base. So corn was something that wasn't really eaten in Europe and was quote unquote discovered as the Europeans learned from the Native Americans how to grow foods. The Native Americans would treat the corn with a process involving ashes, and ashes have this alkali in it that helps to make it bioavailable. And the Europeans, thinking that they knew best, said, nah, we don't want to do that. That doesn't sound like fun. And so they said, we're just going to eat the corn the way it is, which if you're also having, farm animals and eggs and other things, not a problem. But if you're living in an area where there's a big difference between the poor and the rich, the poor tend to have mostly one kind of food for their diet, less access to other kinds of protein. So in the American South, corn was very dominant as a diet food for the late 1800s and early 1900s. And that was where we started seeing a lot of this pellagra. So you can see this guy has all kinds of skin lesions here associated with the pellagra. And there's other not pleasant things associated with pellagra. And so it took a long time to establish that corn was, or that the diet was really the problem. And that was associated with the people not wanting to admit that the way that they were treating the poor was a problem, and people not wanting there to be a social connection. The fact that the people in the South versus the people in the North were getting it more. They thought that that was inconvenient that Southerners were getting it more. They didn't want that to be associated with them. So it took a long time to convince some of the wealthier people that, yeah, this is a problem. And so you need to do something about it by feeding people better diets. All right, so do we still need this one? Okay. All right, so we talked about the three found in whole grains, thiamine, riboflavin. Oh, we didn't talk about riboflavin in particular, but it's also found in whole grains. B9 is folic acid, and so anything that has the ion folate, which folic acid has that and a hydrogen, that is going to be this B vitamin. And so what it does is it helps to develop new cells. So one of the places that you're going to be developing a lot of new cells is in small children, infants, and fetuses. And so what was discovered was that women who were pregnant, who were not getting a lot of this folic acid, and this has been more recent, were more prone to having kids with neurotube defects. Neural means your nerve, tube is your spinal cord. So what would happen is that spinal cord wouldn't close off completely. So the baby would be born and on their back, the spinal cord was exposed. And so, of course, that's very problematic, could lead to death or could lead to severe problems for the kids. So folic acid is one of the things that's found in pregnancy vitamins, but because it was so important for reducing the neurotube defects, they started adding folate to the same things they were enriching in the other 3 vitamins. So bread is enriched in thiamine, riboflavin, and niacin. It is fortified in folic acid. So fortified means I'm putting something in there that wasn't there before. So we can find that in dark leafy greens, but what do kids and a lot of adults not want to eat? Vegetables. So it's hard to get people who don't want to eat those things to get their folic acid, and that's where it becomes problematic. Okay, so fortified means that the micronutrients are added where the food was not originally there. So the other thing you commonly hear being fortified is iron. To have enough iron to prevent anemia is that we fortify foods in iron. So because of the link between the folate deficiency and the neural tube defects in newborns, the fortification was mandated, meaning the government made a law that we have to fortify our refined grains with folate. Now, since it applies to new cells, it is not just infants and fetuses that are growing new cells. You grow new cells every day. Anybody who has known somebody who has had cancer and chemotherapy is aware of places where there are new cells, because if you lose your hair, because you're constantly growing new cells there. Your tongue constantly producing new cells, which is good because like I burn my tongue all the time. And if I didn't constantly produce new cells, then I would have just killed off the tasting part of that. So everybody needs it, but it's really important for pregnant women. All right, are we good on this slide? Not yet. Okay, I think I'm gonna pause on this. We've got B12 to go and then a comment about minerals, but I want to make sure we have enough time for what's in your baskets here. So we talked about vitamin E is an antioxidant. Oh, we didn't do vitamin C either. Vitamin C is also an antioxidant. So this is a little demonstration of that. So you are going to work with a glow stick there, and we're going to open it up. Now, glow sticks have in them a couple of different things. One of them is called luminol. That's what glows. And it kind of has a soft blue color to it. So if you have the sticks that look just white, that's all that's in there is the luminol as far as color. And then if you have the green or the yellow, it has something that is fluorescent in it. So it takes that light and magnifies it. But in order for this to really work, it needs to be oxidized. So there's hydrogen peroxide in there to oxidize it. But hydrogen peroxide in really concentrated levels can be really damaging to your skin. So if you are going to be the person that is experimenting, you're going to want to grab gloves and you should wear goggles. So what you're going to do is there are 3 cups. And you are going to first, you can have anybody take the stick and kind of break it up into pieces so that it can start glowing. So get your sticks glowing and, you know, shake it off all the juice so it's everywhere. And then you have a mortar and pestle. Inside there is a vitamin C cup. So you're gonna wanna crush that up into little pieces. And then in the cups, there is a vitamin E tablet. So 1 cup is for vitamin C, 1 cup is for vitamin E, and 1 cup we're gonna, I need to get some water, but we're gonna try water as our control. So this is our cup that just has water. So you can see it's still glowing.
No, yes.
This is our cup with vitamin E. Alright. Vitamin C. Plus a little piece that kind of stuck together. All right, so what do these 2 have the antioxidant in it? So what do the antioxidants do to the glow stick?
Suppress it.
They suppress the glow, right? Now, the reason this part isn't is because that's actually still in a piece of glass. So you can see around it is pretty suppressed. Hopefully you are noticing the same things in yours. Main thing to know about B12 is that this is not available in plants. So a lot of people try vegetarian diets as college students. That's fine. Just make sure you are getting B12 from somewhere. So there are a limited number of plants that have it, but mostly multivitamin will work for that. And that can cause dementia if you're not getting it. Vitamin C, you probably know, is associated with scurvy. So the name ascorbic acid means anti-scurvy. It is also an antioxidant and it improves immunity. Where did we discover it? Sailors traveling long trips because they weren't getting fresh foods. Here's the thing about vitamin C. When it is cooked, it is destroyed. So when they tried to say, oh, let me preserve this food by cooking it, boiling it, killing off the germs, they destroyed the vitamin C and people still got sick. The other interesting thing about vitamin C is, like I said, guinea pigs are the only, one of the only animals that also cannot make vitamin C. The term guinea pig as a test subject comes from that. When they were trying to test to see what chemical was causing the problems of scurvy, they did tests on guinea pigs. And so that's why we use the word guinea pig to mean a test subject. All right. So I will not include minerals on your test on Tuesday. We will start off with just a brief period where we are, oops, this is not doing what I wanted to do. Where you are looking at ingredients and using the names of the ingredients to match with the vitamins and whatnot. I can, just a second, let me take care of this real quick if I can figure out where it is. What's this one? There we go. Okay, you want the slide before this? Anybody still need this one? All right, here's the B vitamin one. All right, if you got any of the glow stuff on your hands, you should probably wash your hands. It's probably small enough that you won't notice it anyway, but it can cause a burning sensation, so do wash your hands. And have a good weekend. And I will see you